Welkom in de Huddle, de podcast waar we coaches van alle niveaus aan het woord laten om hun ervaring en visie te delen met jullie. Vandaag verwelkomen wij coach Dirk Bauermann, momenteel headcoach bij de Rostock Seawolves en het Tunesische nationale team. Dat deze Duitse topcoach heel wat successen heeft geboekt, is voor velen geen geheim. Maar wij waren vooral benieuwd naar zijn filosofie die achter zijn successen zit. Mochten jullie trouwens nog vragen hebben voor ons, stel deze dan zeker via onze sociale media, Instagram en Facebook. Ready, set and enjoy the huddle. Hello, hi, Coach Dirk. How are you doing?
I'm very well, Gunnar.
Okay, where are you calling from? Germany, I suppose?
Yes, I'm calling from home. I'm calling from Germany. Yep.
Yeah,
Just
okay.
enjoying a few days at home.
Yeah, great. No, first of all, huge thanks for being here, for taking the time to invest with us. As I talked to you before, we launched this initiative to communicate better as coaches, to get in touch with other coaches, share knowledge, share vision, etc., etc. So I think it means a lot for our viewers this week that a coach as Dirk Bauermann wants to join us in the huddle. So thanks again for that. But yeah, I think that the name Dirk Bauermann will also ring a bell amongst a lot of Belgian coaches, since you were the coach at Ostend during the 98-99 season. Do you have any memories of that Belgian experience that you want to share with our viewers today?
Oh, a lot of great memories. I was only there for 1 year. I think I should have stayed longer. I had an offer from Greece, and I thought that would be like a super challenging situation, and I wanted to coach in Greece really bad. But I think I should have stayed in Ostend because we had great people there. Mr. V as an owner was just the type of person that loves basketball, and he wasn't always easy to deal with, but we shared the same passion, which is the most important thing. I really enjoyed living in Belgium. I gained a little weight because I had just the French fries were the Belgian fries, one should call them, but the French fries were just outstanding, and I think I had a few too many of them. But on a serious note, one, it was the fans. The fans were incredible, and I'm sure they still are. And we talked about this earlier. I think we were the first Belgian team to qualify for the Final Four in what they then called ULEP Cup. Mm-hmm. And we played against Estudiantes in the semifinals, and the gym, the old Mr. V arena, was totally packed. The atmosphere was unbelievable. People were so supportive of the team, and I will I will never forget how loyal and supportive they were. The second thing that I remember as if it was yesterday, I really loved our Belgian players because they all played with great heart and passion. Ronnie Beyer, Thomas Vanenspiegel, mm-hmm. Matt de Saver, Jean-Marc Germain, just to name a few, Pete de Bell. So they just played really, really hard, and they all played to win, and they made it very easy for me. So unfortunately, we didn't win the championship that year, but it was still a great year, and I'll always cherish the year there in Ostend. So yeah, it was a fun year, and like I said, I should have stayed at least another year.
Okay, and when did you realize that you should have stayed longer? Was it quite soon, or?
Well, as coaches, especially when you're a young coach, I mean, you're super ambitious, and Greece, you know, back in the day was the strongest league in Europe. It was stronger than the ACB. It was just as strong, if not stronger, than Italy. Italy was really strong back in the 90s and early 2000s, and so when I got the offer, it felt like a great career move, um, and a tremendous challenge. To be the first German coach who had ever coached in Greece and so on and so forth. Um, but in retrospect, you sometimes don't look at what is good about the situation that you're in enough. Uh, and I think that's what happened there. I knew that Ostend was a great situation. I knew that. I really enjoyed it, but you know, the opportunity to coach in one of the top, if not the top, league in Europe was just too much and too intriguing, and so I did it, but Greece is very difficult, and we talked about this earlier. Owners and the media and the players even they can be very tricky, and so it was just the type of situation that today I wouldn't make again, but I made the situation then, and it's all good and well too. In hindsight, everything is 2020. So.
Yeah.
But like I said, I really enjoyed my time in Belgium. I must say, it was great.
No, okay, great. Yeah, you said that you unfortunately you missed the championship with Ostend that year. But talking about championships, I think you, Coach Dirk, you had enough of them. For example, in Germany, you have been named Coach of the Year, I think 4 times. Have won the championship 9 times, 4 national cups, etc., etc. So I guess you can't achieve these types of successes without having a certain set of values or vision. What has been your success formula during your career, Coach?
Well, we almost need a whole day to talk about all of the things that I think are important to be successful in our business. But if I had to narrow it down, I would say one, make winning as a coach, make winning not your own career, not how people perceive you, like the media. Um, don't think about your next contract. Don't think about your next career move. Um, just be where you're at with everything that you have, um, and just concentrate on the situation that you're in, and make winning your only priority. It doesn't matter what people think about you, and what people write about you, and what they say on the internet about you. All of that doesn't matter at all. The only thing that matters is that you gain the trust and the respect of your players, that they are willing to run through a brick wall for you, that they buy into what you're preaching conceptually, strategically, tactically. And again, don't worry about what we call white noise, what people say about you, what people write about you. Just focus on the task at hand and coach and teach to the best of your ability. So that would be number one.
Coach, one question. You talk a lot about the media now. How do you tell this to your players? Because I think it's easier for you to say, okay, don't listen to the media. But for players, I think players always look also in the papers, and they're thinking sometimes about their next step.
Well, yes, I think you're 100% right. And as coaches, we can't control everything. And of course, players will be on social media and they will write things and post things and they will read what people say about them.
Mm-hmm.
I think the key here is that one, you almost force them, at least at certain times, to stay away from social media. Like we have a rule that 2 hours before the game and 1 hour after the game, their phones must be turned off.
Okay.
They don't like it at first because, it's an addiction. They always check their mentions. They want to know what people say about them. But then after a while, they see that it helps them to perform at a higher level. It helps their focus. And so after a while, they turn the phones off themselves without having to be reminded.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, so that's one. The other thing is that, uh, leadership is a big part of what we do. X's and O's to me are not the most important thing because you can scout a EuroLeague game, you can scout an NBA game, you can go on the internet and find 1,000 clips. We have synergy and all these great tools. So it's not that difficult to find great plays. What's more difficult is to become a quality, a high level leader of young men. That's a process. And to me, I've always tried to lead by example and to lead with my heart. I think, the Americans say that uh, the players don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And, and I think they have to feel that you're passionate about the game, that you're passionate about your responsibility as a coach,
Mm-hmm.
and that you are passionate about the common goal, which could be to stay in the league, to qualify for the playoffs, or win a championship, whatever that may be. But they must feel that your heart is in it. And that is more than just a gig or a job.
Yeah.
So that's one. I think you have to lead with your heart. And the second thing is you must lead by example. Um, so I would not expect my players to do anything that I'm not willing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I'll give you an example, and it happens a lot, because it's a tough business, and I understand, but I still don't think it's a good idea to do the following. Okay, so let's say your team wins, or not wins, but loses 3 games in a row, 4 games in a row. The team is not playing well. Okay, now how do you react as a leader, as a coach in that situation? The worst thing that you can do is criticize your players publicly, is to throw your team under the bus publicly to make yourself look good. Like, I gave them a great plan, a great game plan. We practiced really well, but these players, they just can't execute when they're under pressure. They didn't make free throws. For some reason, they didn't do what I told them to do on the defensive end of the floor. When you do that, that's when you're going to lose your players, because they know that for the coach, it's now all about saving his own butt. It's about, to use a more proper term, self-preservation. And when they see that from you as their leader, they will do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They will do exactly the same thing. And it'll be all about self-preservation, like, this is not my fault. And they're going to become very defensive in their decision-making process. They will defer responsibility, like, I'm not going to miss this big shot. I don't want to be the scapegoat, so you go ahead and you shoot it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to help you in a pick and roll, because if my man rolls quickly and I don't have backside help and I get dunked on, I look like an idiot. So again, self-preservation kicks in, because as a player, you don't want to be the one who looks bad. You don't want to be the scapegoat. And that process of self-preservation in that situation, the situation that I talked about, started with what the coach said. And you just can't do that. So I think it's really important that you lead by example, and that you are always, at least publicly, positive, that you defend your players, that you support your guys. And as long as you do that, then I think they will keep following you, because they see that you protect them, and that you do whatever you can to not throw them under the bus. And I think that will create a level of trust and confidence in you as a coach that will make them play harder, and that will eventually get you through crises. So that was my second point. Third point, actually, just understanding that it's a people's business. It's a people's business, and that it is, as coaches, it is our responsibility to get the most out of every player. And in order to do that, we have to have the pulse of the team, and we have to get to know every player in order to figure out what are the buttons that I can push with Gunnar to make him play hard, or with Pete, which might be completely different, because they're wired differently, they have different personalities, they have a different background, they're different in age, and so on and so forth. So I think we have to understand that it's a people's business. It's not X's and O's. It's people that we have to inspire and motivate and lead. And to me, that's the most important thing. It's more important than, I've said this before, than strategies or great plays, or the X's and the O's, as we say. I have two more things, and then I'm done. One is, I think as coaches, we have to at least try to develop a culture. A culture is, in my estimation, it's defined by a set of values, and if we're able to develop a culture in which winning is the most important responsibility of everybody, the most important priority of everybody, in which hard work is a given, in which the goal to get better each and every day, understanding yourself as a learning system. I think if we can instill those values, we then build a culture that I think is extremely important in terms of achieving one's goals. And then the last thing is, for a coach, I think you have to develop a consistent philosophy, offensively, defensively, how you lead, how you deal with media, how you deal with crises, how you deal with management. Mm-hmm. So I think it's very important to develop a philosophy that defines you, that defines who you are, and maybe that sets you apart from others.
Coach, you're for a long time in this business. Did you see some changes about the management? It's more a money business now, or
Well, it was always about money, Um, players can maybe play for 10 to 15 years if they're lucky.
Mhm.
And so they have a very small window to make money.
Mhm.
Um, and maybe build a foundation for financially for the rest of their life. Um, and they're always or usually on 1 or 2 year contracts. And of course, they have to think about their future, their imminent future. They have to think about the next contract. And as coaches, I think it's our responsibility to make them understand that everybody wants winners. Most coaches, they really don't care all that much about stats. They look at other things. They look at intangibles. They look at whether or not a guy plays unselfishly, whether or not he plays hard on the defensive end of the floor, or whether he doesn't care about the defensive end of the floor. Um, I think coaches look at, do guys make the right reads? Is their decision making intelligent? Do they understand the game of basketball? Do they know how to play the game of basketball? That's what the good coaches, most coaches for that matter, look at. They don't look at just stats. Stats to me are meaningless. It's always about context. And that is something that we have to make the players understand, because their agents tell them, look, you got to put up numbers, dude. You got to get 20 every night and 10 boards or whatever it may be.
Mhm.
And as coaches, it's our responsibility to make them understand, look, that is not what will get you a great contract after this season. What will get you a great contract or a better contract than the one that you're on is whether or not your team was winning, whether or not you contributed to the success of your team.
Mhm.
Whether or not you play the game the right way, and you impact the game in a positive way. So I think we constantly have to remind the players of these things, and hopefully eventually they'll understand and they'll buy into what you're preaching. Um, so yes, I mean, with that regard, it has become more difficult. I don't think continuity is valued as much as it was maybe 10 or 15 or even 20 years ago. But that's just the nature of the game. And as coaches, I think we have to adjust to that. And of course, the game itself has changed tremendously.
Yeah, Coach. Last week on YouTube, I saw a video of a clinic that you gave in Poland a few years ago, and it was about your defensive philosophy. Could you, and maybe for the viewers today, could you maybe share a little bit of your ideas or summarize a part of your defensive philosophy that you talked about during that clinic?
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, when you're 63, you don't remember what you had for lunch today. So I have no idea what I talked about in the clinic. I can only tell you, Gunnar and Mike, what I do believe in as of today.
Great.
Okay,
Um,
perfect.
so one, let me go back a little bit. As a young coach, I had the great privilege of working for Ron Adams at Fresno State, and as you know, Ron also coached in Belgium for
Yes.
1 year in the early '80s, I think. And Ron is a defensive genius. he was the defensive coordinator for the Chicago Bulls and for the Golden State Warriors when they won all these championships.
Yeah.
And they basically did what we did when I was at Fresno State. They did a whole lot of switching. They did things, triple switching, scramming, whatever you want to call it, that back in the day we didn't do. But so, having worked for Ron and having followed him and talking to him about defense many times, I still believe that defense is a key foundation of any team's success. I don't care how good you are offensively. I don't care how much talent you have. If you can't get stops, especially at the end of the game, it's very, very difficult to win. So I think that defense is a key element of every winning team, and I think history proves that point. And in order to be good defensively, you have to work on it each and every day, because basketball is a game of habits, as we all know. But basketball is not just a game of habits. Basketball is a mindset. Playing basketball is a mindset. And by working on defense each and every day, one, you develop the proper fundamentals, which oftentimes players nowadays don't have anymore. So that's one. Two, by working on defense every day, the players start to understand how important the defensive side of the ball is to you as a coach, to your mission as a team, and to ultimately succeed. So one, to me, defense is a key element. Two, you must work on it each and every day. You have a question, Mike?
No, you say each and every day. In the clinic, I think you say even in the shoot around before the practice, you do something with defense. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Because muscle memory is a very important thing, and you don't need a whole lot of repetitions for muscle memory to kick in. So if you only do 5 closeouts in your shoot around maybe, or if it's a practice, then it's a practice. The day of the game, everybody is different. I think again, it helps build fundamentals at a high level. Two, it reminds the players of what's really important for us as a team. Now, others might be different, but we don't care what others do, and we don't care what others think. But we know and we understand what's important to us. And defense and the execution of the defensive fundamentals at a high level is important to us, and that's why we do it each and every day. And maybe we don't do it in the playoffs, or maybe we don't do it after Christmas. I'm not talking about working on defense. I'm talking about doing it the day of the game. Yeah. But early in the season, like the first 3, maybe 4 months, we do it for sure. Because I think it's really important to develop that mindset and to develop the defensive fundamentals at a high level, because it's all about habits.
No, that's correct. Coach, we also have a lot of young coaches here at the beginning of their coaching career. When you talk about defensive fundamentals, we all agree that each fundamental is crucial. But is there, according to you, is there one fundamental that we as young coaches should focus more on for young players? Like, is it a boxing out, or is it the closeouts? Something. Yeah. Maybe you have an idea on that.
Yeah. Well, let me make one more point real quick, Gunnar, about my defensive philosophy. Uh, to me, what's really important is the ability to score more easy baskets than your opponent does. And great defense will help you do that. So I've always been a big believer in creating offense with defense. Uh, and in order to do that, I think that on ball pressure is really important. We call it heat, uh, to put heat on the ball. So on ball pressure is really important. And I also think that being disruptive is extremely important. Uh, Taking people out of their preferred options, making them do something that they're not comfortable doing, making them feel you. All these things, I think, will help you win the game within the game and will eventually help you because teams will start taking bad shots. Teams will start making ill-advised decisions with the ball, which ultimately can lead to turnovers. Uh, and to me, there's nothing more intimidating in the game of basketball than if you can't score. If you can't score, it's super intimidating and frustrating, and so that's where your defense comes in. Um, so again, to sum up, one, understand the importance of defense, and if you do believe that defense is important, well, then the fact that you work on it each and every day must reflect that.
Yeah.
And then thirdly, I do believe in pressure, and I do believe in disruption at a high level, and preferably over 40 minutes. Uh, with my teams, we always talk about death by 1,000 cuts. You don't win a game in the first 5 minutes, but you get a turnover here, you get a blocked shot there, you take a charge here, you take a team out of their offense there. So it all adds up. And then, eventually teams will fall apart. And that's what we call death by 1,000 cuts. And I really believe in that. And then obviously, a lot of smaller things that define your defensive philosophy. But I think we need another day to talk about all of that. But to me, those are the two key things that I would want to get across to the young coaches. What was your question again? When I forgot. You asked a specific question.
No, yeah, it was just a question of, according to you, which one of the defensive fundamentals should we focus or work harder on with the young kids, for example?
Right. Well, I think two things. One, I don't think you can be any good defensively if you suck at on-ball defense. I think that's the key. And I think you have to develop the ability to pressure the ball, but also at the same time, keep the ball in front of you on a consistent basis. We call that position pressure. So pressure is important. And I think I explained a little bit why I believe it is. But if you, on a consistent basis, get beat on the ball, it'll lead to open threes, it'll lead to poor defensive rebounding position, and so on and so forth. So you must have both. You must have on-ball pressure, but you must also develop the ability to keep the ball in front of you. And these two things are not mutually exclusive. You can do both, but you really have to work on it. Angles, stance, footwork, all of that is very, very important. And so I would say that for young players and young coaches, the most important defensive skill would be your on-ball your on-ball defense. I think in the modern game of basketball, for older youngsters and at the pro level in general, if you can defend the pick and roll, you can't win games. You have to be able to defend the pick and roll, because never in the history of the game have more teams relied on the pick and roll as much as they do today. So the ability to stop the pick and roll is key, and that's something to me that you have to work on a daily basis also.
Okay, great.
Especially pro basketball.
Coach, you already mentioned it now. Is there some changes during the years? You talk now about the ball screen. Are there other changes that you say, okay, in the beginning of my career it was other than now, and what do you think about it?
Well, yeah, the game has changed tremendously. The game is so much more athletic. It's so much faster. Teams play with a much higher pace. Every country is different. In Greece, for example, the game still tends to be slower and tends to be more of a half-court game than it is, for example, in France. So there are differences, but generally speaking, the players are so much more athletic than they used to be. They take much better care of their bodies. Back in the 90s, guys would smoke and smoked at halftime. And, they would have a beer before the game. That was not uncommon. Nowadays, we all have nutritionists, and the players understand that they have a very small window to make good money, and so they take much better care of themselves. I think that has completely changed. Defenses have gotten much more sophisticated. Back in the day, teams would maybe run one or two pick and roll coverages, and now a lot of teams they run 5, 6, or 7 of them. So the game has gotten much more sophisticated and complex for sure. And obviously the 3-point shot has become a much more important weapon. Even in the 90s, we did have a 3-point line, but most coaches still thought that you needed to get the ball inside on a very consistent basis. And the inside game was more important than the 3-point shot. And that has completely changed. Systemically, things have changed. And now in Europe, they haven't changed as much as they have in the NBA. Like in the 90s, European basketball and NBA basketball were similar to some extent. But if you watch a EuroLeague game today, and then 2 hours later, you watch an NBA game, it's like two different sports almost, very different. So they've gone in very different directions, but nonetheless, the 3-point shot, both in international and especially in NBA basketball, have become a much more important weapon. And that's why I think that as coaches, as young coaches, you must develop shooters. You have to develop shooters. In the modern game, if you can't shoot, and by that I mean when you're 20 years old, I think you have to shoot around 40% from 3-point range to have a chance to become a pro. If you're a perimeter guy, and maybe even if you're a center. So I think it's very important as coaches that as young coaches especially, or as coaches that work with young players, that we teach them how to shoot the ball. The second thing that I think is maybe even more important than it used to be is split-second decision making. Like Greg Popovich talks about zero point 0.5, like you catch it, and within a second, or even under a second, a half a second, you have to decide, am I driving, am I shooting, or am I passing? Just don't hold the ball. Just don't hold the ball. Make quick decisions. And that's very, very difficult to do. Very difficult to do. So decision-making has become much more important. And that is something that we have to teach to the young players as well, I think. And
How you teach this? How do you teach this? Or even with the pros, you tell them on 0.5 you have to decide. I talk about the experience now. Sometimes I tell my players you have to decide, but for them it's not easy. So can you help us to get some practice things?
yeah, you have to run drills for it. That's number one. Like we do a drill on a consistent basis. It's a 4-on-3 drill. And you have 3 defenders, but the 3 defenders, they can't play a zone. They have to match up.
Mm-hmm.
And you have 4 perimeter guys, and you have a 2 guard front. So you have 2 players at the guard positions, at the slots, what we call them. And you have 2 players in the corners. And you can do it any way you want, but for the first 2 or 3 passes, the offensive players cannot drive. All they can do is move the basketball and find the open guy, because if it's 3 defenders against 4 offensive players, then there should always be a 2-on-1 situation somewhere on the court. And so the players have to find that advantage. They have to find it. Decision making, right? Then after, say, 2 passes or so, they can now put it on the floor, drive and kick, and relocate. So you add that to the decision-making process. So you're driving, and now is somebody else open, or do I have a layup? And the goal of the drill is to either shoot an open 3-point shot or a layup or a dunk. That's the only 2 shots that are allowed. So they can't shoot a jumper off the dribble. They can't shoot a long 2. It must be, and a contested 3. It must be a layup or a dunk, a close-in shot, or an open 3. And they have to move the ball and cut and drive and find the open teammate and so on and so forth, until they can find that type of a shot, a layup or an open 3. And so for example, that's a really good drill, and you could do it 3-on-2 too if you have younger players. 2-on-1 is good as well. And when it comes to, driving and kicking, you can set up drills to help the players, young players, with their recognition. So you have a 1-on-1 situation at the top, and the offensive player, the player with the ball, goes by his man. And now sometimes, depending on what the coach tells the defender to do, he will help. Well, in that situation, the offensive player must kick it to the open guy. Mm-hmm. At other times, that player is told not to help. So now you have to keep going and shoot a layup. And you can do very similar things for the pick and roll as well. You run a pick and roll, and you have that third defender who's guarding a corner shooter on the weak side of the floor. And sometimes he will help and protect the big man's backside, and at other times he won't. And the ball handler has to decide, do I make the skip pass to the bottom man of the 2-man side, or do I keep going and shoot a layup? So these are the types of drills that you can use to help your players with their recognition and their decision making.
That's really interesting. And also because of the players, they never go to the basket to score. And that's why I love when you say you either score, or I coach the U21, they have to dunk. If they dunk, it's always foul or it's in. They have to learn how to dunk. And is really important.
I think being aggressive and, putting heat on the rim is very important. Especially young players, they always have a tendency to go lateral when they should go vertical, when they should attack the basket. And, another thing that you can do is you can reward certain things. So don't tell them, well, don't shoot jump shots or don't shoot floaters, attack the rim. You can say don't. Okay. Or, which I think works much better, you can reward them for dunking, or you can reward them for shooting, not making, shooting the open three, because you add an extra point when you're playing, right? So you can play with bonus points, because now they will try to dunk because they know it's a 2, but if I dunk it or I shoot a layup, let's say, as opposed to shooting, a good looking floater or, a jump shot off the dribble, I will get that extra point. And so on and so forth. So I think it's a good idea to have a reward system like that when you're playing. I think that's much more helpful than always telling them what you don't want them to do.
No, I think great one, great insight. Thanks. But Coach, you talked about Coach Adams, Ron Adams before, and I wanted to come back. I'm glad that you brought it up because Mike and we listen on a daily basis to different sports podcasts, and we always hear coaches talking about the importance of having a certain mentor in your career. Do you also confirm the statement? Who has been your mentor? Maybe it is Coach Adams. I don't know. Maybe someone else that you could share with us.
Well, I think it's helpful if you have that person, but if you don't have that person, you can still become a great coach. It's not like, you can go for a walk and find a mentor. Either you're lucky and you have one, or you're not, and you don't have one. But either way, you can still become a great coach. So I don't think that you must have a mentor in order to become a good coach.
Okay.
I was lucky enough to have one in Ron Adams, and I had another one at Gregory, who was my teacher at Fresno State. He coached and scouted in the pros, and he taught me a lot about the game, and he taught me a lot about leadership. But I, at the end of the day, I think what's most important is that as a young coach, you find your own voice. You don't try to imitate anybody. Don't try to become Ettore Messina, or don't try to become whoever, Just make sure that you are always true to yourself, and that you find your own voice, and that you figure out what you're good at, what you believe in, and maybe what you don't believe in, and then that's what you teach. And I think that's the key. That's the key is, to find your own voice, to be authentic. Don't try to be somebody you're not. If you're laid back and everybody tells you should be more aggressive, you're too laid back and too passive. No, that's just you. And I know a lot of great coaches who are very laid back. Steve Kerr is one of them, for example. And there are others in EuroLeague that are not screamers and yellers, and they don't run up and down. Not everybody has to be like Jaskevicius, for example. You don't have. And if you're aggressive by nature, and people tell you, you're too aggressive with the referees and the players, and they don't seem to like it. No, if that's who you are, then just be yourself, and obviously always within reason. But I think it's important to trust yourself and to learn to trust your instincts and to find your own voice, and then learn from different coaches and different philosophies and be eclectic, take little tiny small parts from everybody and develop your own philosophy but the most important thing is to just be yourself, because I think the players will appreciate that. They see right through gimmicks. They see right through that. So the most important thing, again, is to be authentic and to find your own voice and to develop your own system.
And that's why we organize the huddle, to talk with a lot of coaches, so everybody can tell something and you can learn from everybody. What one question about this also, we have a lot of coaches who look a lot of EuroLeague and everything, and they try to copy this. Mm-hmm. But if you see EuroLeague matches or games, they have like maybe 20 plays or 30 plays. It looks like this in the pro teams. Yeah. Can you explain a little bit how it works? It's with some offenses, and how do they do that? And it's not for coaches like us to do. It's really difficult, I think. We are not pros.
Well, first of all, not everybody is the same. Like FS, for example, when I was in Turkey 2 years ago, when I was with Karşıyaka, we played against them. And the coaches told me that ever since the coach has taken over the team, they have pretty much run the same plays. They have a core set of plays, and they run the same plays year after year after year. Whereas Zeljko Obradović, for example, his team was very difficult to coach, because he would put in a new set of plays, like the same play, but the first time they ran it, they would look for option A. The second time they would run it, they would look for option B, and so on and so forth. And oftentimes, you hadn't even seen his team run these plays before. So very different approach. But in general, I would say that the ability of the players to quickly digest information, to quickly learn and apply, execute new plays is unbelievable. Unbelievable. These guys have seen so much. They have seen so many different sets or systems, because in the NBA, they don't run a whole lot of sets anymore. Mm-hmm. They just run actions. And so, but the player's ability to digest the information that you give them as a coach is the key. And what I've found is that, our ability as coaches to figure out how much information can we give them, how many plays can we give them, how many actions, how many reads can we give them, mm-hmm. How many schemes can we give them defensively, that they are able to execute under pressure, when the game is on the line, and when their brains are racing, right? Mm-hmm. And to me, our ability as coaches to adjust to the level of the players that we have, physically, mentally, and intellectually, is the key. That's the key. It's not what we know or think we know. It's all about what helps them win games. And we all know, and you guys are still playing, if as a player, you find yourself thinking out on the court, you will always be 1 or 2 seconds late with your action. Mm-hmm. So I think in American football, they say that, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, that a full head makes for slow feet. And so I think it's very important to narrow the information that we give the players down to what is good for them.
Yeah.
It's not about how much we know. It's about how much information they can digest and still react and play the game intuitively or instinctively. I think
it's better to do them two things good than 10 things half away.
Yeah, people say that if you want to be good at everything, you're going to be good at nothing. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. And at the end of the day, our players must define our system. If you have like these EuroLeague guys who've played EuroLeague for 5 years, 10 years, you can give them 100 plays. Like the Fenerbahce playbook when Zeko was there, I think was like a book, right? They had 70 different plays, 70 different plays with different options. That's what my assistants told me. I don't know, but that's what my assistants told me. And so that's extremely complex, right? But if you don't have players like that, then keep it simple. Keep it simple. It's not about you. If you think that you must show how much you know by what your team does on the court, I think you don't understand, what basketball really is. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the key. Simplicity is the key, and not giving them too much information is the key. And on a side note, we have gotten so good at scouting teams and preparing for our opponent. But again, I think the key is what we do, and it's our system, and to apply our system at a high level under pressure, both offensively and defensively, and you make your opponent adjust to you. And if you give them too much information and you make too many changes because of who you play against in the next game, you're not going to win. I don't believe in that. And, sometimes I see youth coaches in Germany, and I think they make the game way too complicated. They make it too tactical. They run plays with the under 12-year-olds, which I think makes no sense at all. Mm-hmm. If it's about player development and not winning games, right? Because it is about player development. And if you want to develop young players, I think you have to help them with the fundamentals, and you have to teach them how to play the game. And I think that's what's important, and not, running great sets or plays or, defensive schemes that are way too complex for young players.
That's perfect. I think this is really interesting for our viewers and for the young coaches.
Okay. Maybe one last question, Coach. You're at this time you're the head coach at Rostock Seawolves, playing in the Pro A League in Germany. But at the same time, you're also the head coach of the Tunisian national team. Could you just state, according to you, Coach, the main differences or main challenges between coaching a club team and a national team?
Well, it's very different. It's very different in that when you coach a club team, and unless you taking the team over in the middle of the season, but if you don't, and if you have a GM who believes in you and your system, and you can choose your own players, which I think is very important. Not everybody agrees with that. Most GMs won't, and they want to have a say, and so on and so forth. And I understand that, but ideally for us as coaches, we want players that can be successful in our system, right? Now, again, at the end of the day, we can't always pick and choose the way we want to. So the players have to be our system, but in an ideal situation, in a bubble. If you can pick your own players, then that's obviously a huge advantage. When you coach a national team, you can't do that, right? When you coach a national team, you have to pick the players that the country has to offer, and then you have to find a way not to pick the 12 best players, but pick the 12 players that work together the best, because chemistry is so important. Oftentimes it's much more important than sheer talent, and that makes it very difficult because people won't understand some of your choices, because they're thinking, well, why this guy was the third leading scorer in Belgium, but the national team coach doesn't pick him? Why? Right? Because there is no role for the guy. There is just, right, he's not a good fit. That's why, but people won't understand that. So politically, I think being the national team coach is much more difficult, because you have to explain choices that not everybody will agree with, or not everybody will understand. And then obviously, you just don't have as much time. When you coach a club team, and you guys know this, you have your team for 9 months, or maybe you have, and you can work with them, each and every day for 9 months, and you can build habits. And with the national team, it's much more difficult, because you have them, like, for example, in most cases, like, we will play the Olympic qualifying tournament at the end of June. And like almost all of the teams will have our top players for maybe 10 days or so before the start of the tournament.
Yeah.
So if you're lucky, you have 6 weeks, but really, do you have more time than that to develop the type of chemistry that you need, and to teach your system, or whatever you want to call it. So that makes it much more difficult. But it's also a great honor, a tremendous honor, to coach a team that represents its country. And international competition is extremely fascinating. It's just the mindset of the players is usually very different. When you play for a club team, you're a pro. You get paid for what you do. But when you play for your national team, you're representing your country, and you want to represent your country as best as you can. It's not about money. It's just about representing your country as best as you can. So there's a level of pride involved that you don't find when guys play for their club team. But both are great challenges, and I like doing both. So yeah.
I hope you qualify for the Olympics. It would be amazing.
Yeah, it's a very difficult group, and unfortunately, we also have Germany in our group, and you never want to have to compete against your own country, but no, it's a very difficult group, with Croatia and Brazil and Germany and Russia and Mexico. So it's going to be very difficult, but we're going to give it our best shot.
I know one viewer. He's a Tunisian guy. He hopes you will qualify. Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, no, great. I think, Coach, honestly, I think this was a huge conversation. You gave us so many insights, not only to me and to Mike, but I think to all of our viewers, a lot of young, ambitious coaches. So again, many thanks to you, Coach Dirk, for taking more than 1 hour of your time today. I wish you all the luck for the rest of the season at Rostock, and as Mike said 2 minutes ago, good luck with the Olympian qualifiers as well. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, guys. I think you're doing something that's very valuable for Belgian basketball, and good luck with the huddle.
Okay,
Thank
great,
you.
Coach.
I hope we see you in Germany one time. We come
I
over
hope
there.
so too. I hope so too. Thank you.
Okay,
Man.
thank you, Coach. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Coach.
Bye.
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 Volgende week is er weer een coach van eigen bodem. Jeffrey Brown is al enkele jaren actief bij de Oost-Vlaamse club Valko. Wil je dit gesprek niet missen en op de hoogte blijven van ander tip-off nieuws? Volg dan zeker onze sociale media. Bedankt voor het luisteren en tot volgende week.